Welcome back to AM Northwest. We want to give you a heads up about our next segment. Some viewers may find aspects of it disturbing, and you may want to send your little ones out of the room. So it was an infamous case in 2002. Two young girls from Oregon City disappeared, and the man who killed them was their neighbor. A new book explores the case and the 3 generations of murderers from one family. We welcome the author of Close to Home, Sexual Abusers and Serial Killers, Memoir and Murder, former newspaper reporter and one-time Clackamas County prosecutor, Janine O'Neill. Good to have you with us, Janine.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Talk to me about why you wanted to explore this case more in depth, because you already knew everything about it.
Well, I didn't know everything about it.
Okay.
I knew what the media and the public were allowed to know about it.
Okay.
And that was so frustrating to me because I'd been on the inside as a prosecutor, even a prosecutor in that very county, in fact, prosecuting that very same kind of cases. And then when you're in the media,
right,
you're several rows back in the theater, and that just drove me nuts. And so I just wanted to get more of a sense of what really had happened.
Okay, let's set out the members of the crime. So first you have, most notably, Ward Weaver,
right,
who's in prison, Ward Weaver. Then you have his father.
Right, who's also named Ward Weaver, but his family had nicknamed him Pete, and so I used Pete Weaver, right, in the book just to try and keep people straight.
Right.
And then there's Ward's son, Pete's grandson, Francis Weaver, who was convicted of murder, and that conviction got reversed, and he ended up convicted of manslaughter.
Yes. But
he was charged with murder and convicted by a jury of murder.
Okay, so here we're looking at Pete Sr. on the far right, Ward Weaver in the middle, and...
Yes.
Okay, and the youngest one again is
Francis.
Francis, that's right, that's Francis. Okay, so you looked into the fact that Pete had also killed many people.
He admitted to killing 24 people.
2 dozen.
2 dozen. Mm-hmm. 2 dozen. And he offered to plead guilty to those crimes and to go out and find the bodies, tell the police where the bodies were in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table. And the prosecutor in that county in California at the time was very, very, very pro-death penalty. That was his platform.
Yeah.
He said, no, we're not going to reward this guy, you know, for having committed
more murders.
More murders.
Yeah.
And so they turned down the deal, and Pete Weaver is still alive. He's never going to be executed. He's on death row in California, where he's written his own book. He's gotten married.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then look at the influence that that Pete had on Ward.
He had a strange influence on Ward because he didn't raise him. Mm-hmm. The parents got divorced when Ward was preschool, but he obviously had, you know, a huge psychological influence on him. Ward's recreation of his father's most famous crime scene was obviously very deliberate. His dad had buried a female victim in his own backyard and covered her up with concrete, and Ward did exactly the same thing. And many people were calling to his attention, you know, Ward, this looks really strange.
Right.
You know, because they knew about his dad. He talked about his dad amongst his friends and his family. And
I feel like when I think back on that time, because I remember very distinctly working here at K2 back then, I remember Ward, this is a K2 file video of Ward, I think, giving Anna Song, now Anna
yes,
Canzano, a tour of his house and walking over the concrete slab in which Ashley's body was.
Yes.
Yes. And it seemed...
And deliberately walking
Deliberately doing it. Deliberately doing it. Also, it seemed like he idolized his father, because I recall him talking about how his father had killed and put somebody in his backyard. Right. Right?
He told a Tribune reporter, you know, that he was embarrassed by his father, but that obviously wasn't the case.
No.
It obviously wasn't the case at all. He emulated his father, and I talked to an inmate who's currently serving with him who said the two correspond all the time. Oh. They're not allowed to correspond about their respective murders because that's not allowed by prison rules, but that he said they corresponded constantly.
So when you're looking into this and you're actually looking at nature versus nurture, right? What did you find with Ward and Pete?
Oh my gosh. They come from the most dysfunctional line of people, and it goes back generations. It's just absolutely astounding. Pete Weaver's parents were, his mother was the most psychotic, I hope I can say that on air, most psychotic person. She sexually abused him. She physically I would say tortured him
Wow.
as a kid. And so she's this combination of sex and violence and motherhood in his life, you know, and he turns out the way he turned out, which is convicted of 2 murders and convicted of 2 attempted murders, and admitting to having committed many more murders, which I'm sure he did.
And then Ward Weaver's son, Francis, as it turns out, it wasn't his biological son, but he was raised by Ward as if he was his son.
Right.
Because they didn't know that until much later.
No, they didn't know that until they analyzed DNA evidence from the crime scene. Ward didn't know it, and Francis didn't know it. Francis's mother knew it.
Yeah.
But she hadn't shared that information with her husband or son.
And at one time, Francis was considered a hero because he reported Ward.
He was covered in the media
Yeah.
as a hero. I don't know that he really played as big a role in the case.
Because at one point, his girlfriend, Ward tried to rape his girlfriend at one point.
He did rape his girlfriend.
Yes.
He very nearly killed Francis's girlfriend.
Wow.
She escaped. Right. And yeah.
So then Francis reported
called
that.
911, but the task force that was investigating Ashley Pons and Miranda Gaddis's disappearances was already all over Ward Weaver.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like the fact that Francis called them about Ward Weaver was the first time they'd ever heard the name.
Yeah.
Francis was on national TV in connection with this.
And then Francis was then convicted of a crime as well, right?
He was convicted of murder for a drug deal gone bad in, also in Clackamas County, but in Canby in 2016. And then his conviction got reversed for legal reasons, and he pled to manslaughter.
So what do you think is Ward's influence on Francis?
Well, Ward did raise Francis,
Right.
and the influence was horrible. Francis had a horrible home environment. His siblings had a horrible home environment. It was abusive. It was physically abusive. It was criminal. His dad was engaged in criminal activities, and Francis was exposed to all of that. Ward involved Francis in that. He had him breaking into cars to get money for drugs when Francis was 12 years old. You know, it was just a life of criminality that he was exposed to and raised in.
And lastly, what did you conclude? Is it nature or nurture or both?
It's both.
Yeah.
Every expert I talked to said it's so complicated, and that it takes a perfect storm of nature, nurture, things.
All of it, yeah,
right.
Absolutely. You have a book event tonight.
I do.
Right? At
I do.
Annie Bloom's. And we want to tell everybody if they'd like to check it out, go there at 7 o'clock. It's on Southwest Capitol Highway. We'll put all that information for everyone on our website so they can read that as well. And we want to mention again, the book is titled Close to Home, Sexual Abusers and Serial Killers, Memoir and Murder. Janine O'Neill, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We just barely touched the surface.
It's okay.
So much more.
It's nice to be here. Thank you very much.
You bet. We'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.